Good morning. I'd like to call the order to the Education Committee for Wednesday, December 14th, and we're going to establish quorum. Mark?
Jamie Zamora.
Here.
Kipman Chan.
Here.
Michael Corradino. Absent. Jeannie King.
Present.
3-0. We have a quorum, Jamie.
Great. We'll move to item number 2, the approval of the September 25th, 2015 Education Committee minutes. Do we have any concerns or changes from the board members for these minutes?
That's right. She has to recuse because she wasn't here.
So I recommend, Jeannie, since you were not present at that meeting, that you abstain from your vote and that the motion be to accept the minutes rather than approve them, since you won't have a quorum. Okay.
So I motion to accept the minutes. Do I need a second?
Yes.
Okay. Kipman, do we have any other changes? No? Good. Okay, then I will motion to accept the minutes. Do I have a second? Okay. Second. Mark?
Jamie Zamora.
Yes.
Kipman Chan.
Here.
Minutes are accepted. 2-0.
Well, so do Jeannie.
Oh, Jeannie King.
Present, yes, yes.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Okay. Thank you, Jeannie. All right.
Great. Thanks, Mark. We'll now move forward to item number 3, discussion and possible action of Acupuncture Board Ethics Continuing Education Requirement for licensees and possible recommendation to the board, and I will let Mark take us through that.
Okay, I'm actually gonna, I'll just sort of quickly review the history of this, but I'm gonna have Jay Hurt, who's our education coordinator, take it just as it's sort of, it falls under his purview. Basically, this is an issue that we've had for a little while in our world, as they say. The language was originally approved back at the November 11th, 2012 board meeting. In discussion with legal counsel and in talking among staff, the feeling is that the existing text that was approved back in 2012 is a little vague and maybe requires a little more definition. And we have set out some questions for the board members or some things to possibly discuss. And so the idea would be to perhaps discuss the issue. If you'd like, provide direction to staff, we can come up with some additional, more refined language and bring it back to the committee or to the board, whatever the committee desires to do. So that's kind of the goal here.
Okay. Jay Hurd, I'm the education coordinator with Acupuncture Board. And as background, I looked at a number of other boards in terms of what they have done with ethics. And particularly, we looked at the chiropractic board, the board of psychology, and the board of physical therapy. And they're very similar, is that the patients are going to be seeing practitioners in a sole proprietor situation. So there's a good comparison there. And so I just give you a quick summary of what those boards do, and then I'll let it go back to the board and they can discuss or further define what professional ethics are for the Acupuncture Board. So the Chiropractic Board requires 2 hours of ethics and law, continuing education for each licensing cycle. And in addition, the Chiropractic Board has a law and ethics supplemental exam that applicants are required to take for licensure. The Physical Therapy Board, in a similar vein, has 2 hours of continuing education in law and ethics required, and they also have a California law exam that's required for licensure. And it's not just looking at their regulations. These law exams are the complete overview of California law. The Psychology Board does not require any CE units in ethics, but they do require each licensing cycle that the licensee attests to the fact that they've kept up with ethics and law as based on their regulatory structure. And then also the psychology exam also has a law and ethics exam, a California law and ethics exam that's required of licensures. So that's a little bit of background on that. And actually, if we look at their acts, they do define a little bit, you know, in terms of the areas of what they're talking about, in terms of, you know, particular issues, so, okay?
So it seems like, so it sounds like for each board, it's about 2 hours per board?
That's what's kind of the kind of standard that seemed to come up
Okay.
there, was the
And we
2 hours.
proposed 4 hours, so.
Right.
Is it every 3 years or just every year?
Every 2-year renewal cycle.
Yeah, I think that they're on 2-year, I don't have that right at hand there, but I could get that to you at some point. What is the chiropractic board, isn't it?
Chiropractic board is annually.
It's annual, right.
Is it 3 years, 2 years?
Well, I know that for physical therapy, they require 30 units total. And I think, I don't have that total right, I could look for chiropractic, but I think chiropractic is, they require, it looks, after June 8th, 2013, they require 24 hours, but that's per 1 year. So it's like 48 hours compared to ours.
My CBA board, the accounting board is required 4 hours per every 2 years.
On ethics.
Effort.
Right, okay, good. Yeah.
So then I guess I'm trying to figure out what's the question we're trying to answer here? Do we need more hours, or is it the type of hours that we're doing?
Perhaps is 4 good, is.
I think they're both.
Okay.
I mean, is it, what?
Do we remember back to 2012 why we came up with 4?
Roughly, it equals to 2 a year, some of these other boards, or also the over.
Well, let me ask Jeannie. Jeannie, what do you think, considering you're the licensee up here? I mean, is 4 hours good?
I mean, I'm glad that you just quoted like the other board member, the boards, and I think that's pretty standard for other boards, and I think it's good, especially because we deal with a lot of the ethical issues that
Yeah.
have come forward through our board. I think 4 is good.
Yeah,
Unless somebody
yeah.
wants more, but you know, if we're up par with psychology and chiropractic and PT, then I think we're good.
Right, and I think it goes hand in what Jeannie just mentioned. The public might not know or know, but we're constantly reviewing cases with enforcement about
Right.
actions that are coming before the board that we're constantly looking at, you know, behavioral issues, ethical issues. So this is something that we've been looking at since we've all been on the board.
I don't think it should be less than.
And if you look at the chiropractic, it's 2 years licensing cycle, so that's 4 years comparably, because they do it annually. And along with what Jamie is saying too, but for our enforcement, we're often looking for continuing education to allow people that have some kind of enforcement action on them. And there are some courses, but this would really help, you know, encourage, you know, our educators to provide, you know, a better background and give more options for licensees and for
And it's also
enforcement.
tested.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, even with the new law, under the California exam, the reason why we put it in that language is so that the California exam could have California laws and regulations be tested, correct?
As I recall, the KL does have California regulations
Yes.
and laws.
It's built
Of
in,
course, yeah. But I'm saying even with the new law, we made it so that this part will be tested based on California laws and regulations. So I'm just, I'm just saying
yes.
that we're in agreement here that the importance of ethics being tested, the laws and regulations being tested is still gonna hold true into the future.
Correct. The supplemental,
Yes.
as discussed at the June meeting, would include anything that's not on the national exam.
Right. And so
Including-
I'm just adding to the point that we're trying to make, the importance of the students being tested on this.
And the chiropractic board, I mean, in terms of defining it, they just define it as ethics and law, and that's it. They don't give much more than that. And, I mean, if you research into this, it's a topic that's been going on ever since physicians have been treating patients, because
Yeah.
it's a very vulnerable, you know, intimate relationship that ethics are definitely go hand in hand with that.
Yeah, I think we have to
we-
look at the case for how many cases in the effort in the enforcement committee, so to determine the effort issue, how much weight on it. Look at the case the board received the last few years. How many involve the effort issue? So then, if this is a very important factor, we should raise the hour to go to 4 hours per each turn. And we have to look at it because the case, it tell you, and how many people, and that's an important issue or not. So I think that then you have to look at the last few years, what is the case involve effort, and see is it a very priority, then we have to raise the effort hour for each term, from 2 hour to 4 hour, whatever.
I think I think it's also important for us to be mindful. The fact that the chiropractic board, the psychology board, and the PT board has these hours, I think we need to be on par with them. I don't think our profession is worse criminally or worse ethically than other professions. So we have to be very sensitive about raising more ethical hours if other boards are at par or we're at par with those hours. I think we have to be sensitive to that. That's number one. Number two, I have looked into the chiropractic board issues. I've actually watched some of their videos. Their cases are sometimes a lot more heinous than ours. And so if their ethical review is requiring those many hours, then I don't think we need to be too aware or too sensitive of having to raise those hours. I think right now, the acupuncture board, because we're still considered a young profession, I know there's certain things that we're still catching up on, but with ethics, I think it is being taught, it is being tested on the CALE, it will continue to be tested on the future exam. And long as the participants are paying attention to it, I think the board is doing our job in making sure that those are required and mandated.
Right, I mean, if we're at 4 hours and anybody else is too, I think we're going above and beyond already. And then the question is too, I mean, how much, ultimately, someone's gonna take 4 hours of these classes, and there's only so much you can learn every single time. They're gonna do right or wrong. It's just the nature of the person is. I mean, 4 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, I mean, it's not gonna matter, so. So in order to move the meeting forward, Ben and Mark, what else do you think we need to refine this? Ultimately, from what I could tell, our language is a little bit too broad, possibly. It sounds like we need to be more detailed in what we're doing here.
Well, we wanted to bring this back to this board. If I recall correctly, none of the present members were at the table when this was first
Gotcha.
pulled, motion to go forward. So we wanted this board to confirm that this is
Gotcha.
the direction they wanted to go. And just greater clarity. For example, the chiropractic board also requires 4 hours in CPR and first aid. Now, it's not related to this, but there's other requirements that we can look at later as well for continuing education. But yes, we wanted to get the board, this board, looking at this.
Well, that's good, thank you. But I think just looking at the language, I mean, unless you guys feel like we need to be more specific, I think that's pretty specific enough.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to gauge. Are we
Yeah.
talking about picking classes or
Yeah.
just trying to gauge what we need to do?
What, go ahead.
Well, I just have a few questions, I guess, from my perspective in looking at this, because in looking at your CE requirement reg that's already in place, there are some things that I just wanna make sure what the goal of the committee is in order that they work together. So, for instance, one of them is that your regulations allow 50% of the required continuing education hours to be independent or home study courses. Now, is that something that you are still gonna allow your law and ethics to fall into that category as well, or do you wanna carve out an exception that it needs to be a live course, or how do you want that to work?
I
So
know, I
those
see,
types
okay.
of things,
Okay.
from my perspective, need to be hashed out a little bit.
I'm not aware, I'm not familiar with ethics courses being online. If there's anybody in the public, please come forward and let me know. Because it is important that this is taken and it's not just, easily given out. So long as there is a format and they have to go through the testing before they get their certificate for the 4 hours, I'm okay with either way. Yeah, long as we know that it's been taken. And
With our
there's no loopholes in that, if you know what I mean. Jay?
With our distance courses, you're required to take an exam to show competency.
Mm-hmm.
With the live courses, you're just allowed to attend. So, I mean, that's a little different criteria.
As an education coordinator, in your opinion, do you think that ethics courses should be live, or you think it's okay to be online?
I think the current state of technology allows the content to be delivered and either way.
But how,
Yeah.
would we, how would we verify though that they did it, that they took it?
Well, I mean,
Outside of having an exam right after? 'cause you said
that,
it was
that's on our providers to provide that, and we do audit the providers, you
Okay.
know, in
Okay.
terms of what's going on, and every course that every course that is approved for continuing education is approved. You know, that's looked at by more than one person, so I approve the content, you know, we look at the hours really
The distance
carefully,
courses?
we look at the, yeah, for both of them,
Okay.
they get analyzed
Okay.
exactly the same.
We could certainly require, the board could require an exam be taken in ethics as part of this CEU requirement.
Right.
Well, the class,
The
the
class
class you
right.
take has to have an examination component.
Yeah, that's my question.
I
so.
think that's an
Yeah.
important component
Yeah.
because, you know, we all know to a certain degree that sometimes these courses don't necessarily teach what Jay is looking at. So I want to make sure that with ethics that it's being taken. So whether that is online or in person, long as the board is doing due diligence to make sure like the examination is added so that they're taking it, then I think we have done our public safety duty.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, so all ethics classes would require an examination.
Right.
And hopefully that will cut down some of the ethics issues that we have. But, you know,
Yeah.
I think with any boards, we're dealing with people that are just breaking laws anyways.
Right. So, does the board have any more comments at all? Because I'd like to hear from the public on this issue. I'm really
Okay.
interested in it.
I'm good.
Steve Given, academic, I'm going to lose my voice now, sorry. Steve Given, academic associate dean, California Institute of Legal Studies. I agree with Dr. Kang. It is entirely appropriate and possible to effectively deliver the material equally in an in-person or an online or home study format, that in fact the likelihood of delivery in the current structure you have now is probably higher in the out-of-class format because a test is required. Regarding who takes the test, that is an issue currently extant in higher education. There are ways to validate, to verify who took the exam, and we can provide you input on that process. At this point, I think that the compelling reason to have an in-person exam, an in-person class, which would not be germane to ethics, would be hands-on material. That a variety of material is now as effectively, and in some cases perhaps more effectively applied through online or other non-traditional delivery systems. So, thank you.
Can we comment back or, yeah, so Steve, I think this is where the board and the schools really need to work together, because when I read this and I'll talk about it more in the full meeting, when I look at some of the convictions or the charges that is showing up, for example, like uncleanliness or some things that I think that are so basic that the students or the practitioners, it shouldn't be in this book. And so if there is some way where we are protecting the public by the regulations that we can keep, but the schools also have to let us know that this is being taken and they are being examined for it. I don't know how that will be arranged, but I think it's one of those things where we have to work in a joint effort that the ethics and laws are really being pushed and really enforced strongly, so that we don't deal with a lot of these graphs that we're looking at. I think in order for us to decrease that, the schools and the board has to work together on this.
I absolutely agree. This is a great opportunity to enhance public safety by working collaboratively. I'm also going to suggest that one of the changes that's coming up very, very soon, that California is becoming more part of the national standard, that in fact this dialogue has taken place nationally And historically, California was somewhat isolated from the ethical and safety dialogue that took place nationally. And I think there's a great opportunity here for California to join that dialogue and both enhance the work nationally as well as reflect on what's happening within the state. And this includes safety, this includes ethics. I know the NCCUM is very, very active in the area of ethics, has an ethics committee that's working on this. So that's another possible point of collaboration as well. One last point to suggest is that there's a very different standard for an accredited program delivering material, including material on ethics and safety, and continuing education. While I think it is great that we look at ways to strengthen continuing education, that remains a level, I wouldn't even call it training, a level of education outside of an accreditation process and outside of the quality control supports that are there to make sure that if it's an accredited or candidate program, that they're doing exactly what they need to do.
So you're saying that the ethics and laws part it should be really just taught by the accredited schools and not as CEU? Is that your point?
No, not exactly.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that the critical step is that by having the material delivered by accredited schools in the original programs, that this is going to make sure that some of these issues are covered well. As long as practitioners in California, depending later on in continuing education, that's going to be a lower level of oversight than is possible for continuing education in the current structure. So really the critical point is to make sure that we have continue to make sure we have robust accredited and candidate programs with strong ethics components.
So you're comparing more to accredited programs as opposed to non-accredited programs. Is
Correct.
that your point? Okay.
And
got it.
accredited curriculum versus continuing education, which is often delivered by someone
CEUs.
who as a CEU, that doesn't have an education or
Okay.
even ethical background.
Okay.
Thanks.
And just a reminder, in 2017, there will not be any non-accredited programs approved in California, so.
Thank you, Jay.
Yes, Jacques Mormarco, Empress College, Academic Dean. Legal counsel brought out this 50% online, 50% live, and what Jeannie was mentioning as the online component, and Jay also talked about the online component. There is an area that seems to be a gray area where individuals are taking online seminars and counting them as live seminar because it's live. Therefore, it's not recorded. And they are saying these are live CUs. And I think this is somewhat concerning that somebody could go and get the whole 50 units and never have put their foot into any type of live CU practical type of experience. So if we can put that as an agenda item, I know this is a little bit early maybe for that, for the educational committee. But this area is really of big concern as an educator, that individuals don't ever have to show up because they're doing live seminars, and these seminars are taught live. As an example, one of the big outfit taught a live seminar. There were only 3 people live in that room, and 200 people were on remote throughout the country. There was also PDA for national CUs. So I think it's very, very important from a public safety standpoint that these CUs, the actual individual sees the technique, sees the CNT, gets heads on their practical techniques, especially for all kinds of needle insertion and protocol, and they're following the strict CNT guideline. And I don't think just doing it online the whole 50 hours, because some of it's live online, it's correct. And I don't think that area was very clear from the beginning, so maybe this individual are not understanding that this is, they still are online. I don't know if anybody can comment on that. Thank you very much.
Ben, Mark, anyone? Kelsey?
Well, so
No?
that's a separate issue that will
Okay.
have to be taken up at a different time on the agenda, but.
Okay.
On the educational committee.
Right, it'll be a future agenda item.
Okay.
Do we have any other comments from the public? Okay, seeing, yeah, sure, Dr. Colon.
On that issue, or?
It has
Suggestions for agenda items.
Well, we're not there yet. We're still on this topic. Okay, great. Thank you. So I'd like to bring it back to the board now. Maybe the board members, we could take a try at this language here, because again, what I'd like to do is take a stab at this language here. Maybe we don't make a lot of changes, or even a small change, but I'd like it to get it back to the full board, because I feel like this is something we should all discuss together, to make, because I know there's a few more acupuncturists I think could have, want to talk about the issue. So let's just look at the language we have now. So as it writes, an acupuncturist shall take no less than 4 hours of continuing education in professional ethics every 2 years to meet in his or her continuing education requirements. Based on what we discussed here, and one suggestion I would probably offer is that we would add the language, an acupuncturist shall take no less than 4 hours of continuing education in professional ethics in person or online every 2 years to meet his or her continuing education requirement. Maybe we use that as a starting belt. If you guys have anything else you'd like to suggest. Mind you, to the public, this is still gonna go before the board. We're just working through it here. Nothing we do here is final, so, okay. Anything else you guys are thinking over there? Because the idea is because none of us have looked at this. So this was done in 2012. So based on what we talked about, it's one of the suggestions I see that we're doing here. But
Do we need to, I think Jay commented that other boards are calling it ethics and law. So should we say professional ethics and law into the language? Would that broaden it or specify it more?
I was going to recommend that the board at least consider that topic,
Okay,
you know.
All right.
And along that line, some of the other boards will allow 4 hours of CEs for licensees who attend board meetings, which is a direct experience of law. And, from my standpoint, it'd be wonderful to have more participation from our licensees in terms of understanding what's really going on with everything rather than
Oh, you mean
learning about it
require them
during-
to come to a board member meeting?
Well, just, as a board, they could sign in and, that's just, some other boards have done that to get participation.
I don't think we should use the law because we are not attorney. And the law, legal
the
counsel, we
attorney's right
can come
there.
on. And the law is specific for the attorney. And we are acupuncturist license.
What it's referring to is the acupuncture laws. So
But you
it's
just-
referring to your Practice Act, not necessarily, the practice of law, but it is referring to that, your continuing education will be geared towards, the Acupuncture Practice Act of California, as well as the ethical component.
So you think it's okay?
I think it's okay, yes.
yeah, Kevin, so I think it'll be like, practitioners licensee will learn about, can they sell needles or can't they sell? Basically, the law that governs
Laws and the
it.
regulations
That
that
governs
pertain
it.
to the
Yeah.
profession.
Because our book is all about laws and regulations, so to add that in is just
I think it's
making it more
detailed, yeah.
specific, yeah.
Yeah, it's more detailed.
But
yeah.
the legal counsel, I thought the law is specific for the attorney.
It is, so, but in this specific, this is referencing the laws of acupuncture. So it's making sure that professionals are aware of the laws that govern them as professionals, as licensees.
But I'm still concerned that if you put the course as an effort at law, and it looks like it confused to the public, and those people, and knowing the law, and not acupuncture law, any law. So I might be had some kind of concern or use that word on the law, because I understand the accountant, I'm the CPA, you
Yeah.
cannot use the accountant. You
Right.
cannot use.
Right.
You have to be a licensed to use the public accountant. Okay, the same thing I think is going to apply in here. You are acupuncture, you are not the law, you are not the attorney. You're not passed the law exam. And how are you going to tell the people ethics and law?
Right. Kevin, when you take ethics courses for your profession, right, you have to take them, right? So in those courses, do they teach you about laws that govern?
Yeah, they have the
accountants?
exam for the law.
No, right, so I'm saying, in the ethics courses, do they teach you about classes that govern accountants?
Yeah, the
so-
ethics is for the seminars, for the accounting, for
Right, so
the,
it
yeah.
teaches you about laws that you have to abide by.
Yeah, we have to take the one exam for
Right,
the
so
law.
that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, but you say, but the looks like the acupuncture licensee, they did not take the law exam, part of the law exam in the exam. So how you going?
Oh, we
They
do,
do?
they have to study the laws and regulations book to take the exam. So the laws and regulations book that we abide by, they actually have to read that, and the ethics part, in order to study for the exam and study for that part of the exam, they
But-
do have to read it.
Yeah, but we still cannot use the law because we are not practicing law. And a couple cases, the CPA and use the law language in the statement, the court will throw it away. You are not attorney. You cannot use that. That's why I'm concerning this, the law, when you're saying the ethic and law. That's why I'm concerning the work on the law.
Well, what we can do, especially in order to make it clear to the public, is that when this notice of regulation is filed in the initial statement of reason, it will be very clear that we're not referring to the practice of law, we are referring to the laws and regulations that govern acupuncturists.
So, Jay, in the chiropractic board, they call it ethics and
It's
law.
ethics and
And
law,
what
and
does a
it's-
PT call it?
They call it ethics and law too.
And what does the psychology board call it?
They don't, let's see. where is my-
They don't
Law and
require,
ethics
yeah, but also already in your regulations, in 13994.
They call it law and ethics.
3,
Law, it's already in there. Okay, got
For
it.
your approval of continuing education courses, you have different categories, and one of your categories is courses concerning law and ethics.
Okay, so the language is already in there in
It's
different
there.
order. Okay.
Well,
got
let
it.
me offer this as a suggestion to committee, because I understand what he's talking about. So,
I understand too.
and mind you, if this is too long, let me know. So, starting with, an acupuncturist shall take no less than 4 hours of continuing education in professional ethics and law that regulate the acupuncture profession every 2 years to meet the ongoing requirements. Kipman,
Oh, I'm fine.
is that okay? Okay. Is that too long for legalese?
You need to get it from me afterwards.
Okay. Because I understand what good Kipman is,
No, I understand.
so I'll read it again. An acupuncturist shall take no less than 4 hours of continuing education in professional ethics and law that regulate the acupuncture profession every 2 years to meet his or her, I'm gonna read it again. An acupuncturist shall take no less than 4 hours of 4 hours of continuing education in professional ethics and law that regulate the acupuncture profession in person or online every 2 years to meet his or her continuing education requirement.
Fine.
Okay?
That's fine.
There's a public comment. Do we take
Yeah.
it or can
Yeah,
we take it?
yeah.
Okay.
One possible suggestion for wording, we're now wordsmithing, legal requirements for practice as an alternative wording for you to consider. And the other thing is many of the non-in-person CEUs are not in fact online, they're home study. So you would need to include home study or online. Online is a specific nomenclature that involves using a learning management system such as Canvas or Moodle, and basically only universities and colleges do that. So you would need to be able to include the folks that are currently allowed in California to provide home study that would not necessarily be through an LMS.
In our current language on that is distant education.
Oh, okay, so then, yeah, we would change the language there then. Distant.
Jamie, so would you want to do professional ethics and laws relating to the practice of acupuncture? Is that the suggestion we just read?
the acupuncture profession, right, Jamie?
Yeah. Ethics and law that regulate the acupuncture profession,
Every 2
in
years.
person or distance learning, every 2 years to meet his or her continuing education requirement.
The board had also, or the committee had also discussed requiring an exam for the live courses, since that's not
But
required.
that was already, you had mentioned that it is,
For distance education, exams are required. For live courses, they are not
Oh, they're not,
required.
yeah.
However, they are able to offer them if the provider wishes that to be the case.
what do you
I
think,
agree.
what do you think, Jeannie?
I agree on both.
Yeah, I would too.
On both, yeah.
Right. So let's,
So an
Need a couple
examination
of
component should be added as an requirement.
Yeah, on both. Yeah.
can we add that somewhere?
Yes.
Okay.
We can add that somewhere. My other question, in just wordsmithing a little bit, to be more in sync with your, continuing education compliance regulations that do spell out what those requirements are. So you have, and I'm not the expert on the CE stuff, so please help me out, Ben and Jay. But, So, you have this initial renewal period. Do you want to require that they do it in that initial, if they haven't had a license, if they've had a license for less than 2 years? Is that something that they need to meet? They need to do this? Or is it something that it's now just a condition of regular renewal? And I would also put that language in instead.
Say that one more time.
So your continuing education compliance says, with the exception of those holding an inactive license, when renewing an initial license that has been issued for less than 2 years, licensees shall complete the following hours of board-approved continuing education. So you have this small category of people who have to renew their license, but they have had it less than 2 years. So are you going to require them to meet this course in professional ethics? Or is it something that's just applied as a condition of renewal after that initial period?
I think especially if they've been inactive, it's important that they get this right away, because a lot of the cases that we deal with, what do we ask them to do? This, exactly.
So
Yeah.
so that's kind of, because
Yeah.
it says with the exception of inactive licenses, so it is, so if somebody
both.
hasn't been licensed for more than 2 years, they have this sort of
Niche area.
special- Yeah, they have this sort of special renewal period.
Correct, yeah.
So, since there is a law and examination component, does the committee feel that this needs to happen as a condition of that initial renewal period? Or has there been, not so much time has passed, that exam component is still relevant, and therefore it's only going to be a condition of that following renewal? Of a regular two-year renewal. Does that make sense?
Basically,
There are 2 renewal cycles.
yeah.
Right.
So there's the initial one, and that's only for people that have been licensed for less than 2 years. So what I'm saying is that for those particular individuals, they have taken the law and examination
Right,
exam.
gotcha.
Just
They had
in
already
the
just taken
exam.
it.
They already
They've
taken
just
that
taken
exam like within 2 years.
Yeah, within 2 years.
Okay, got it.
So, do they need to meet this requirement? Or is it just a condition of regular renewal cycles every 2 years thereafter? Does
You
it
know-
apply to all, or does it apply to some?
From the cases we've seen, since 2013, we always go back to making sure that they take an ethics course, right? Because obviously they're breaking the law, they're in front of us. So I would require it, this is where I would feel like let's do more than less. So if there's a category where even if they did it within 2 years, if it's for some reason they've been inactive.
Well, no,
We're-
it says with the exception of inactive licenses.
that's a separate.
Okay.
So those people would
Okay.
not fall into that category
Okay.
at all. If you've had an inactive license, you would not get this, not special treatment, but you would not be in this very small category of individuals that doesn't have to do as many hours for your renewal in that initial 2-year period. So it's not taking into consideration those that have had an inactive license.
So it's just for,
It's just those that have had a license for less than 2 years.
Which means it's those that just took the test.
Correct. That just received a license, the initial licensing period.
So, so it's basically we're asking people that just took the test and studied for the law exam, do we want to make them take another course even though they had just studied for the Cali and just learned all this type of information and should know it? Are we asking them to take another course within less than 2 years to do that? So, Gina, you're the acupuncturist, what do you, do they need to do it again, or is it overkill?
I'm only addressing that in cases where a law has been broken. But if they're just law-abiding acupuncturists like myself, and I just took the exam 2 years ago and I already passed it, I don't want to require them to do it again within the 2 years. My point is, in the case of inactive or illegal situations, then yes. But you're not talking about that category. That's the exception to the category.
Right,
Okay,
that's
got
the
it.
exception to the category,
Okay.
and then you'd also still be able to impose disciplinary procedures
Right,
to
right.
those
Right, right.
individuals who have been broken.
So this category, like this small category, why is it there? I'm not sure the presence of that little category that you're mentioning, I'm not clear.
Are you talking about the initial licensing period?
Yeah, that period.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead. No, it's just.
Why, if they just took the exam 2 years ago, then why is this initial,
That's what
what am
I'm
I not
asking.
Yeah, that's what
understanding?
she's asking.
That's just what I'm asking, because you already have that in place in your continuing education requirements.
Mm-hmm.
It carves out this category whereby you, based on the period of how long you've been licensed, it's a certain number of hours of CEs that you have to have in order for that renewal, but it's not your 50, it's.
Oh, so what is
it's
it?
a
So
scale.
what is it?
So
It's either
it's
35,
time
40, or
dependent.
45, based on how long you've been licensed.
Ah, okay, now I understand.
So it
You're
ranges from
asking me, I'm like-
13 months to 23 months, and what the board does, and I believe other boards do this too, is they use this period so that they can renew the individual at the end of their birthday month, thereafter every 2 years.
Okay.
So it's just an initial period. So that's just why I'm asking, because I want to make sure
Yeah.
that it works with your already existent regs and how we want to apply that, so.
Right, and I think I would agree with Jeannie, considering if people had already just taken the law test, they don't need to take this course again until they're renewed. What do you think?
I agree, yeah.
Because
I-
these are individuals that just studied for the Cali, took
Yeah.
the test.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now I understand Kelsey's question.
Okay.
Yeah, so
So,
I don't
Would
I
we have
don't
to add
think
that
it's,
language into?
yeah.
So that-
Yeah, so I would add that language in, and then I'd also change just some of it, instead of need his or her continuing education requirements, I'd either put, as a condition of renewal, or reference back your regulations on continuing education compliance.
Okay, so
Um,
2 years, 2 years. Okay, you'll help us, Brad.
Yes, so I would probably then reference back to subsection B of 1399489. Oh, no, not B, sorry. It's A, but it says thereafter all licensees shall complete 50 hours every 2 years as a condition of renewal. No more than 5 hours in category 2, but that's irrelevant to this.
Okay.
So you
Right.
you could add it into the act, you could make this a standalone regulation, or you could add it in here. However you feel it flows best.
It's better to have it in one, to make it more detailed, because that's what we're trying to do here.
So a standalone. Okay, so
Jeannie,
then,
throw it all into one.
Yeah.
so then, I would say something about, do you wanna hash it out now, or do you wanna direct me to work with staff?
Yeah, I was gonna do that.
Offline?
I was gonna do
Okay.
Then do we
but-
need to approve it
Yeah,
later?
we'll do it right now. But do we have any, Mark, first?
Yeah, it's gonna get back to the full board, so it's
The other
okay.
thing that comes to mind is when people have been, we talked about this, we touched on it briefly, but when licensees who have been inactive, do we want to make this a requirement for people who have to go back to active status, that they have to complete a law and ethics portion?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I think so.
For sure.
Okay. So we need
If-
to sort of add that into the language. too.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they've been inactive for a couple of years, then definitely.
Can we do that here, or that sounds like it would be a separate condition
That
for
sounds like
inactive
it'd be-
licenses?
Yeah, that's separate.
Okay.
So we'll bring that up.
And I think the point that,
Yeah, it might be able to be done in,
You can't just attach it to this, attach it to.
no, because this is a continuing education requirement, it's not a condition of
License.
returning to active license.
Got it. So
that's
it's
a different
separate.
section of the,
Okay.
so the part that Jacques brought up today, as far as making sure that the acupuncturist steps into a classroom, even because we specifically said 50-50, is that something we're dealing with in this committee, or do we need to go to the full board for that? Because I do want that to be brought up.
Well, that's another agenda item, right?
That would be a
Yeah.
future agenda item
Yeah.
for education committee.
Yeah.
For the education committee, okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Um,
As long as we have it on there.
Yep.
So, let me just make sure that I have all the components that you guys want. You don't want it on the initial first renewal cycle,
Right.
you want it only as a condition of regular renewal.
Yes.
I'm gonna write all this down.
In person or distance?
In person or distant,
Yep. And we're changing it to distant instead of online to be more broad, to include home study, is that what we're doing?
Yeah, because it was
includes
based on
home
the,
study.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, it's also in, just reflects language that you already used.
Okay,
before.
got it. Okay,
And then you also want there to be a test component.
yes.
So
And then the more
And-
detailed language regarding ethics and law.
And while you guys are doing that, can I ask a question to Jay? Or Ben? Now, the providers that provide the ethics courses, what kind of vetting process do we go through with them to teach specifically? I mean, okay, if you're teaching 5 elements, fine, but for an ethics course, how do we know this is legit person teaching? How do we know?
So we have an instructor information sheet, it's page 4, thank you, of the continuing education course application, and they have to, if they're not a licensee, they have to attest to where their skills are coming from, and they have to have at least 2 years' experience for this.
Okay,
And that's the requirement.
it, okay.
2 years' experience of teaching this information.
are we comfortable with that? Jamie?
That could be something to discuss
Or
at
Jay?
another thing, but
Yeah,
the
'cause
consideration of, vetting of providers, it's definitely something we hear about.
I think this,
No,
I
yeah.
hear about this all the time. I don't know if it's appropriate to talk about it in this committee or another committee, but it is something that we need to talk about. Because if we're gonna do all this laws and, changing this up, I think it's important who we give permission to teach this to. So let's discuss that in the appropriate meetings to come.
Right, we can definitely bring it up in our future agenda items.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeannie. Seeing that we're good, right, in terms of what we need to,
Okay.
language? Okay. Any comments from the public? Yeah.
They've been holding their breath right now.
Philip Young from Nanstar University. Regarding from the CEUs, I just have several questions to verify. One is, once we get this either regulation or something, this is demanded courses for 4 units, right? And how to verify? Do they have to provide the certificate so that we can verify, oh, they've been taking this class? This is the one question. Or we just fill out the courses, approve the courses in the just regular renewals as other courses.
that's
Yeah.
actually a really good question. Do you mind if I jump in really fast?
Yeah, sure.
Because,
Repeat that back to me.
that's a really good question because you have all of these other requirements of you have to, if you've taken a class in for the next 4 years, right, or something like that, you have to maintain records of who you took it from and your certificate and those types of things. So if we do a standalone regulation here, you're not gonna have all those components. So if you put it into your continuing education compliance regulation, then all of that would already be built in and it would apply just as the other CE course, the other CE courses
Okay.
are regulated.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
I would recommend now, after that, thank you, to
To put it in,
into
that's what we were talking about,
this,
right?
so
Okay.
that it works with your pre-existing CE requirements.
Yes, thank you. Another one is, when do we have any curriculum or guidelines for these courses? The course requirement, what's the components to teach? Like the regular laws and regulations we've taken in the school and also in the exam. Then the continuing education will be, one is the remind to get awareness of the practitioners, but after some time of practice, they forgot their specific laws, or their behavior, their practices deteriorate from the laws and regulations. This is a remind. Another is, could be the case studies, case analysis for someone do the wrong doings in the practice and then cause the problems or get revoke the license or something. These cases could be a very good reminder for the practitioners. Like I've been working with AACMA, the Acupuncture Association, to be in charge of the ethics department. So I read articles and also sometimes share the cases I learned from the RCB meetings. That all the cases could be good warnings to the other practitioners. So this is just a suggestion. Another is, Ben just mentioned, for the requirement for the instructors, who can give the teachings.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Great, thank
No,
you.
one question, what you just mentioned about the cases, you meant like cases that you read online. Like, I didn't understand exactly what you wanted, what your suggestion was with the cases.
The case could be online case, could be the ones like every time we have the board meeting, we have some cases, someone the license being revoked because they get the wrong insurance claims or many things.
Oh, so you want us to publicly announce some cases to help, is that what you're saying? I won't understand this.
Analyze some of the cases which is being published in like in CB public meetings. Or some of the could share like someone, yeah, we do like in Bay Area, we have these years with several practitioners, their license being revoked.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we can share these kind of cases to give the awareness of the
And
others.
who's sharing it with who? Can I?
What we do is we do it in the association.
Okay, so you
Yeah,
guys
for the
are doing that
members.
within the associations as membership group?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And
this
you're-
one could be considered as CEU courses on the ethics.
So you mean CEU courses with cases
Yeah.
that, so like the public, the practitioners can come take a
Yeah.
CEU course based upon cases of revoked licenses so that they have an idea, these are the examples why your license could be revoked. Is that what you're
Right,
saying?
right, right.
Oh, okay, now I understand
Yeah.
what you're saying. Okay.
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 Thank
you.
So an idea of another CEU course. Okay, got it.
Case studies.
Case studies, okay. Now,
Any-
is that
Any
public
other
knowledge?
comments?
Yeah, all
Okay.
accusations are on our website.
Okay, so we're gonna move forward, and I wanna make sure that everyone's on the same page and we know what we're doing. So we're gonna take a motion, however, I wanted Kelsey just to read through exactly the 4 or 5 things that we know
Okay.
we're gonna have in the
So
language.
first is gonna be, it's not gonna be a standalone has been put forth as 1399489.2. It should be now incorporated into your 1399489. And I would say that it's maybe, it'll be like a subsection C. And then we would edit down the line, all the rest of the subsection.
Okay.
And that it only applies to regular renewals. That the courses can be in person or distance learning. That there be a required test component. And we're gonna insert more detailed language regarding, the law portion of it.
Okay.
So are we still just dealing with section 489.2?
It won't be .2 any longer. We're gonna incorporate it into your pre-existing CE.
Okay,
Still 489.
It's 489.
Just 489,
No
okay.
.2.
okay,
Like C1.
Or make it a C, and then we'll drop everything else down.
right, okay, just make sure the language right.
So that's more of a technical
Right.
thing. We're more concerned with the word and the language, but.
The substance, okay. We're good.
So the committee can make a motion to, that they want to direct staff to craft
Right,
this language
yeah.
to bring to the full board maybe at the next board meeting, or they can craft language that they want to see it again prior to it going to the full board, however. you
Okay.
want.
I got it, okay. So I'll motion to direct staff to make changes outlined in this committee meeting to section 1399.489 and bring back new language to the full board to review at a later date. Have a second?
I'm second.
Thank you. Call vote.
Mark?
Okay, motion is to direct staff to develop language to bring, with the requirements discussed today, and bring to the full board at a future board meeting, by Zamora, second by Kippen. The vote, Zamora,
Yes.
Kippen,
Yes.
Jeannie Kane,
Yes.
okay, 3-0.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the members of the public for participating. Now we're going to move towards item number 4. Future committee agenda items. I know we've kind of discussed a couple. And I'd like to take a quick moment to ultimately kind of thank the staff for the past year. We've had 8 meetings in a whole year, whether it was full board or committee. So thank the board, thank the staff, thank the public, because we've done a lot of this work with all of you. And I want to make sure we acknowledge all of the agenda items that you guys have all given us the whole year. It might not be here today, but I want to let you know we haven't forgotten about any of them. Ben and staff does a good job of marking down all of them. So we want to let you know we're still working on a lot of items. We're still working through our strategic plan. So a lot of the items that you discussed have been part of that strategic plan, because ultimately we still have a mandate from the legislature to move through that. So we do what we can throughout the year, but I just wanted to list a couple that we'll be looking at that you've all suggested. One being, we're going to be looking at possibly evaluating curriculum standards to ensure professional qualifications in public safety. One of the issues with definition of being physically present. Another one was naming the terms in use in training programs. Another one was exploring licensing qualifications for a bachelor's degree or setting a score for the medical college admissions test. Another one was promulgating regulations to require international applicants and students attending non-English track schools to pass the TOEFL exam before being eligible to sit for the CALI. So we want to acknowledge that we're still working on these things. We know they've come before the board. We haven't forgotten them. We want to make sure we let you all know that we're listening and we appreciate everything you tell us. So with that, Dr. Damona.
Hello, Dr. Bob Damona, Dean of the College of Eastern Medicine at SCU. And I'd like to propose a future agenda item for the Education Committee, expanding on what you just said, Mr. Zamora, and more specifically, align the CAB clinical education requirements with those of other healthcare professions.
Thank you, Dr. Damona.
Yoon Kim, Empress College. I'd like the committee to consider putting on the agenda the issue of allowing DOM students who are not licensed in California to fulfill their clinic hours on site at a school under the provisions that you have for guest acupuncturists. So Empress College, along with a number of other schools in California, are offering the Doctor of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine programs. We've been running the program for over a decade. It's fully accredited by ACOM. Currently, we have about 40 students, and a quarter of the students travel each month from out of state, coming from Texas, Arizona, Minnesota, Hawaii. They are unlicensed in California. They're licensed in their home states. So when they come on site, they can't practice acupuncture. They're observing to fulfill their clinic hours. So what we'd like to ask the committee to consider is that these DOM students be allowed to provide clinical treatments under supervision under the provisions that you have for guest acupuncturists, where acupuncturists who are not licensed in California can be invited by an institution or an association and practice acupuncture for 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Wei Wei. And talking about the continuing education, because currently under the regulation, the continuing education providers, they are only required to turn in certain fee and fill out the application, and they can be the provider. It's very poorly regulated. I think for the providers of continuing education, it's very important to check their background and check if they are really providing the good quality of the continuing education class. And so it's a very important issue for the public safety too. So we will recommend the board either to have a more clear requirements of providers, like what qualification they should have to become the provider, or either just simply increase the fees and in order to to ensure the quality. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no more public comment, I'd like to apologize to my board members. I'm sorry. Do you have any suggestions for future agenda items? No? Okay. I think we have a lot for us already. So
I think there was some agenda items from the last meeting we had, and I think Kelsey, we said we're taking care of the 1246, and then the agenda items that they wanted, as far as the supervision part, I think Damona mentioned it and a couple others. That will be in the future agenda items. Okay, just want to make sure. All right.
Great. Okay, we'll move to item number 5, move to public comment on items not on agenda. I think everyone's already talked about it. Okay, seeing none, board members, anything?
We're good?
Okay, I will move to adjourn this education committee meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you.